Hi, I'm Natalie Jill, fat loss expert turned lifestyle and high performance coach. When odds are stacked against us, how do we shift and create everything from nothing? How do we level up when we aren't feeling it yet or have had a big setback? And how do we adjust quickly when life throws us major curveballs? On this podcast, I do what I do best, taking complicated information that is relevant to us now and breaking it down simply with actionable steps you can implement to level up your own life. I also regularly interview some of the most inspiring and courageous men and women on the planet who at their worst learned how to achieve success greater than they ever dreamed possible, leveling up, creating everything from nothing. If you are new here, I encourage you to go back and listen from episode 1 for the full transformative experience. Bret Contreras is widely considered the booty building glute expert. He builds backsides, and he's the founder of the ever successful GLUTE LAB chain. He found his niche in that backside building, and his knowledge, coupled with his direct marketing know-how, truly works. And his timing was perfect. In the era of J-Lo, Shakira, and the Kardashians, everyone seems to be fascinated with that backside. But how did a guy get so dialed in with this niche? Bret was always inventing and growing up when he was obsessed with glute science as a teenager and a young adult. He says it's 60% genetics, but the rest can be built with hard work, the right foods, and the right training. And he's got that formula and science dialed in. Join in today and learn exactly how Bret Contreras found his niche in the business of glute building. Today on Leveling Up, we've got a very different topic. I am talking with the booty expert. Yes, the booty expert, Bret Contreras. I was drawn to him because of my search for building my backside, which is all of the rage today, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, because when I was in my 20s, it was never about the booty. It was about breasts. It was about all the women were getting breast implants. It was a very different thing. But in my research, I found an awesome trainer that was helping me a lot. And we started using this incredible equipment. And I thought, where is this stuff from? It's so unique. And that brought me to your page, Bret Contreras' page, who founded GLUTE LAB. And I saw quickly, I started reading about him and how he became this booty expert. This man became the booty expert. So thanks so much for being here today, Bret. I'm so excited to dive in. I have so many questions for you.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me. And I'm excited to do a unique podcast so that we'll have the same questions,
Yeah.
about glute.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have some questions about glutes. I'm not going to lie because we're all curious about that. First, I want to go back to kind of your journey and your story. Like how does a guy become the booty expert that all the women want to go work with?
It's so funny. Looking back, I was always interested in glutes and more interested than anyone I've ever known. In fact, when I was 19 years old, my cousin, Brian, I was training him at the time, and he was getting so strong, we called him the tank. And Christmas, he buys me this book. It was something like The Ultimate Guide to Butt and Leg Development. And I still have it. And I looked through, I was like, this is amazing. Thank you. But why did you buy it for me? He goes, because I've never met someone so obsessed with the glutes. So I'm 44 years old right now. So that was when I was 19. So that was 25 years ago, I was being told I'm obsessed with the glutes. And now I've never, my enthusiasm for learning about glutes has not diminished one bit since then. I'm still just as gung-ho and I have all these unanswered questions. But along the way, it's like the reason why I became so interested in glutes is because I had none. I had no butt. And you don't, if you just have a nice butt, you can, I always say this, genetics are like 60% of everything,
Okay. Yeah.
And because I train some women who just don't have to do much and their butts are perfect. And then I have other women who do everything I tell them to do and they don't change much. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's the same for every muscle. And just in general, people think, oh, if I worked out 4 hours a day, I could be a bodybuilder. No, you can't. They have the best genetics in the world and they train the hardest and eat the best. And, so for me, I was able to build my glutes, but it took, I had to learn, I had to study them and read up on them. And eventually I started developing my own methods, but initially everything I read, like in the bodybuilding magazines back then, we didn't have the internet. When I was like that, the internet started coming about to be around that time when I was around like 19ish. But before then, I wanted to build glutes. You couldn't really find much articles on it because it's still in the bodybuilding world. It's weird. You don't talk about glutes. Male bodybuilders, it's just like, think about it. They talk about traps, drugs and everything. They talk about all 3 delt heads, biceps, triceps, arm day, pecs, lats, abs, quads, hips, calves, everything except this missing. It's weird. It's almost like it's like some homophobic thing or something. I don't get it because they just don't talk about glutes. You never have a glute day. You have a leg day. You say, I'm hitting quads and hamstrings. It's not I'm hitting glutes today or I'm hitting quads, hams, and glutes. It's always just I'm hitting what do you do for quads? What do you do for hams? Now, the steroid using bodybuilders, their glutes get big just by they use steroids and then they do things like for legs like squats and stiff leg deadlifts and their glutes get big. But that strategy doesn't work for most people. Like if you just try to do squats and stiff leg deadlifts, you tend to get big quads, big hamstrings, but your glutes get bigger, but they're not maximum. And that's what the people who find me, they might want, they might want to focus on glutes more than anything. It's like I have a lot of clients who have me write programs for them. They're like, I just want glutes.
Yeah. It's so interesting too, because I really feel with women, especially, and I'm 49 as we're recording this. And so in my 20s and 30s, it was all about this different body type. It was about being as thin as you could be and big boobs. And that was like the age of the breast implants.
The Victoria's Secret models was what everyone wanted to look like. And no one wanted to be jacked and no one thick. If you said you're thick, that would have been the biggest insult. If you said your butt was getting bigger, that would be like, oh my God, I got to die. And now it's changed so much. And I love it. This body acceptance movement, I love it because now it's like cool to have.
Totally is. And it's interesting because like the Kardashians and like, I think that a lot of that brought attention to it. So what's interesting, Bret, is so I've been in the fitness space for years and I was great with abs and everything else. And I never paid attention to my butt. I always thought, okay, I just assumed I had one until my 13-year-old was like, Mom, your butt's flat. And I was like, what do you mean I have a flat butt? Like because she's so conditioned from, the internet, social media, whatever, saying that that's accepted. But what's interesting, I have so many questions for you about this because one, I'm wanting to know like how this became this obsession with women all of a sudden butts, but then also from a functional fitness training, I believe the reason I had a disc rupture in my lower back is because I didn't have strong glutes. So I think for health reasons and functional fitness, it's actually really critical.
I totally agree. So to address your first thing, like how it came to be, because I feel like it's like 33% of it is me, 33% just changing fads. And 33% like the Kardashian, well, probably more than like 50% then, maybe 25% and 25. But all right. So it's like, I think J-Lo was probably the first really, and J-Lo and like Shakira, and they have these nice butts that they wiggle around while they're dancing and stuff. And then the Kardashians came around and it was like, whoa, so that them being so popular, people wanted big butts, but that alone doesn't drive this glute thing. It's also like, hey guys, you can build it. Before, like it was. So I have this what I call the rule of thirds. It was a really popular post I made. I should post it again. But I wrote about it in my book GLUTE LAB. It's 1/3 of your exercises for glutes should be vertical in nature, meaning the weight is like on your back or in your hands. When you're standing, you're doing squats, lunges, good mornings, stiff leg deadlifts, deadlifts, step ups, Bulgarian split squats. All those exercises are vertical. And they're hardest when they're at the bottom and they work your glutes in a stretch position. They create a lot of muscle damage. You tend to get sore from those exercises. Then another third should be horizontal in nature. These are your exercises that these weren't around back in the day because I invented hip thrusts. People did bodyweight glute bridges. They do things like Jane Fonda type workouts, but not with weight. So these are your barbell hip thrusts, your glute bridges, your single leg hip thrusts, your back extensions, your reverse hypers, your quadruped hip extensions, things like that, pull throughs. They're where the vector of the load is coming from front to back. And those work your glutes hardest at the lockout. That at the lockout is where glute activation happens to be the highest for glutes. It's not the same in other muscles.
And for people listening, because a lot of people don't know what that means, when you say lockout, like squeezing at the top or finishing the move? Okay.
Exactly. Yep. And so those build the glutes probably through, they work different regions and they work different, like the vertical work the lower glutes better, the horizontal work the upper and lower glutes. And then the other third should be lateral or rotary in nature, meaning all the abduction stuff you see, wearing the bands, doing cable standing hip abduction, seated hip abduction machine. And that's
like donkey kicks, would that fall into that type of movement?
Horizontal, because you kick back, that's hip extension. These are abduction, you go outwards.
Sideways, okay.
Going sideways. So this rule of thirds is really cool because then the abduction develops the upper glutes better, the glute medius and the upper division of the gluteus maximus. So when you do that, when you train that way, you will develop the entire glute. And you'll also end up doing a lot more volume for glutes than if you just did like squats one day, 4 sets of squats, and then 4 sets of stiff leg deadlifts, and that's all you do for glutes is 8 sets a week. That's how the bodybuilders were. Now you have a lot of my girls are doing 36 sets a week for glutes. But you can recover from it because there's so much variety, and you're only 12 of those sets are really damaging. The other 24 are not. The abduction don't beat you up. It's like penalty-free volume, I call it. They don't get you too sore. You can recover from it. But back in the day, it was like when I was like 20 years old. If you typed in "how should I train my glutes" or something, you couldn't.
There was nothing. And for women, it was how to get a smaller butt. I remember that. Like, it was totally how to get a smaller butt.
It was like do these Jane Fonda type stuff, the aerobics. But back then it was like just squat and do lunges and maybe stiff leg deadlifts. That's it. They'd say the donkey kick machines are stupid. The abduction machines don't work. Many bands weren't around then. Hip thrusts weren't invented yet. Glute bridge, no one did weighted. So it changed a lot. If you look at the way people train pecs, lats, delts, biceps, triceps, quads, hamstrings, nothing's changed in the last couple of decades. But glute training has been totally
changed.
And I believe I'm the main source of that because I came up with almost all the methods.
I know. I could not believe I didn't know that. When I started digging, I was like, this is so impressive. So I've got a lot of questions about you, about how you claim that space and how you came up with it and how you've branded, because it's incredible. But before I ask about those, I do have some questions that I know, especially some of the women listening want to know. Like, one, is it ever too late to build glutes? Like, is age ever a variable? Can you build them in your 50s?
So here's what I'll say about that. Because the textbook answer by personal trainers and strength coaches, like, yes, you can build muscle at any age. And that is true. Like, even there's studies looking at 9-year-olds who start lifting weights, they build muscle, but they've never trained before. So like, if you've been training like me, I've been training since I was 15 years old, training properly since probably like 20, and I'm 44. So I've been training hard for, 25 years. So it's like, am I going to grow my glutes a lot more after training hard as hell for 25 years? No. Eventually it gets to the point where I'll probably start losing. I don't know what age that'll happen. Hopefully not till I'm like 60 or something. But it depends on how hard and how properly you've been training. So, but if you've never worked out before and you start training in your 50s, hell yeah, you can build glutes.
Okay.
I've done it with so many different clients. I've trained 60-year-olds.
Wow.
Who built their glutes. I've even trained a 7-year-old who built glutes. Who people were like, wow, your glutes are changing.
So that makes sense. So someone like me who's worked out her whole life, but never really focused on glutes, someone like me could grow it then, is what you're saying. Because if we've never actually pushed it.
If I trained you 6 months, you'd look totally different.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's different when you focus on them and prioritize them, and you're with a coach that understands progressive overload. It's funny, when I train people, I'm not like yelling at them the whole time. It's most of the time I'm having them rest, but I push them really hard on their sets, but then we rest 3 minutes,
Yeah.
It's like a lot of resting, but then when you do your sets, I'm pushing hard, but we have a goal in mind. It's like, hey, I might write a new program every 4 weeks, but it's like, for those 4 weeks, I want you beating what you did on week 1. And
That's
then
great.
on week 2, I want you, week 3, I want you beating what you did on week 2 and week 4, and then we switch. But it's the same but different concept. Because there's this muscle confusion that got popular with P90X, and it's like that threw people off. It's misleading.
Mm-hmm.
You need to switch it up, but not that much. So it's like we're always doing squats, we're always doing hip thrusts, we're always doing, single leg stuff and hinging and stuff and abducting, but you switch up the stance width, you switch up the bar placement, you switch up the rep range, things like that. You don't have to totally divert. It doesn't have to be drastically different. It's like we're always doing variations of the same movement patterns.
So talk to me about the functional aspect of glutes. And I'll tell you just a little background on mine, because my audience knows my story. I have completely healthy disc, except for between L5, S1. I had degeneration and I had a complete rupture where I needed emergency surgery. And to me, when that happened, it was a shock to me because I thought I have a strong core, I'm fit, like how in the world? Now I'm clear in my mind that had I had stronger glutes, that wouldn't have happened. But I want to hear from your perspective because you're the expert on this.
So there's this kind of back and forth, like kind of disconnect between pain researchers and the strength coaches. They hate it when we say, like, when I say the glutes are the secret to low back, like, getting rid of low back pain or something. They get mad at that because that can cause a nocebo effect where if you don't have big glutes, you can be like, oh my God, I don't have big glutes, I'm going to hurt my back. And then you can actually hurt your back because you think you should. It's a lot of pain has to do with the brain, but you're talking about actual injury, disc degeneration. Here's the problem with disc degeneration. People don't know this about me, but I have studied the discs. Like, my first journal article I ever published was called To Crunch or Not to Crunch, and I reviewed the research, but I probably read 400 studies on disc physiology and biomechanics.
Okay.
You start degenerating when you're 2 years old. There's evidence of degeneration. And it's like, when you're like 90, all your discs are degenerated. It just should be called aging. The reason why this is so important to me is when I was 15 years old, I got in this really bad car accident. I was limping around. My back hurt so bad. And the doctor comes to me and he gives me an MRI and he said, oh my God, you have the spine of a 90-year-old. You have the worst disc degeneration I've ever seen in at your age. You have the spine of a 90-year-old. You should probably never play sports or lift weights. And tell that to a 15-year-old. I was like, my world was shattered. And I thought, I legit thought that at age 25, I'd probably be in a wheelchair. And I was so depressed and I was limping around. And then at about 6 years later, I remember I was 21 years old and I had just learned deadlifts, and we didn't have the internet. So I would just, like, my friend and I learned them. And if you would have had a video on us, it would have been a YouTube video fail. Like, our form was so bad. We just completely rounded. We did not hinge properly or keep an arch. We would just bend over and pick the bar up. But within my first few months, I could do 405 pounds for 6 reps. And I remember telling my buddy, I was like, James, I don't think we're doing this right. I feel this all in my low back. He goes, I know, I don't think we are either. But we had no one trainers. We're at the college gym. But it dawned on me, I am so strong at these. I actually have a strong back. And now it's all these years later. I wish I could go in and get an MRI and compare it to,
sure.
I don't know how I tracked down that MRI from when I was 15. But bottom line, everyone has disc degeneration. 25% of people have a herniated disc and they don't even know it. They don't have pain. They're asymptomatic. So we need to stop. And the other thing is, I'll meet people that are like, I just need to let you know I have a herniated disc. And I'm like, when did you find that out? And they're like, like 6 years ago. And I'm like, well, it's probably not herniated anymore. You're in a state of flux. So you can type into Google. If you type into Google search PubMed spontaneous regression of disc herniation, you'll get all these case reports, these case studies of, look, we imaged this guy and he had a big time disc herniation, and then 6 months later we imaged him again. There's no evidence of that. I'm sure microscopically there's evidence because bone heals back stronger, but soft tissue heals back weak or biomechanically inferior. But still, they can't detect it on the image, meaning they're in a state of flux. You can improve upon them. My back, I don't have back issues anymore, and I can deadlift 635 pounds. Yeah. So what happened with you, here's the thing. It's like, because people come to me, I have so many of my clients, like at my glute squat, I could just go, Amanda, Chrisanna, they all had hyperextension related back pain. When they first came to me, they were like hyperextending.
Totally.
Flexion related back pain or hyperextension related. And they would be like, oh, my back's hurting. And I taught them not to hyperextend, or I taught them not to round in a deadlift. And then their back pain goes away. It's funny because they're after the very first session with me, their back pain never resurfaced.
That's amazing.
Session.
I've had 2 surgeries from that rupture, and I'll tell you, because I train with Brianna, who's a student of yours. And she's literally right there with me when I'm doing these glute exercises, and I had to put my ego aside from what I know. But I watched the little tweaks she does on me, and I'm like, wow, it totally bypasses my back. I'm like, well, no wonder my back's been hurting. And I had all this because I was always using it the wrong way. I wasn't activating my glutes right.
And so that's what the research shows, that people who have like back pain tend to have stronger backs. You know, you lift with your, I don't like the term you lift with your back, but when you do hip extension, it's coupled with spinal flexion and extension. You don't keep a rigid torso, bend mostly at the hips and lift up. You will round everything and kind of come up with it. And that's just how people tend to, you go pick something off the ground. You don't tend to like have a neutral spine. You tend to just bend over, pick it up. So the problem is it strengthening the glutes, or is it learning proper form, or both? It's like you remove the insults. Like if you're keeping a neutral spine, so a lot of it's like proper glute training takes care of it on 2 ends. Number one, you strengthen the glutes, and research shows when you strengthen a muscle, you use it more. So it's like if you don't have much glutes, you're not going to use them much when you lift. But if you have big glutes, it'll even alter your form a little bit, and you'll end up taking advantage of that strength. But also you remove the things that can damage the discs, like when you're lifting under heavy load and you round your back, you have compressive forces on the spine because the muscles are clamping down and they're compressing the discs. And then you flex it. It's like pushing on a jelly donut, pushing on one end of it, and the jelly will migrate to the opposite side.
Makes sense.
Well, that's how you get disc herniations. You get posterior lateral disc herniations, meaning the back and to the side because the spine is in the way. You get those disc herniations to this like back and side of the discs because of the constant flexion under load. So when you quit doing that, you don't have the damage to the discs. So it's very important to learn proper form.
Yeah.
Do these movements. And there's some movements that are like, I always tell I have the simplest recipe for back pain clients. They come to me, oh my God, my back's hurting, this is hurting. And I go, okay, you're going to do hip thrust, but it's all high reps, pauses. High rep pause hip thrust with pristine form. You use the knee band, the glute loop, put the glute loop on, use the barbell, start out with 105 pounds, because that's what I have, a 15-pound barbell. My bars are 15 pounds, the light load. And then I have them in the corner. I'm like, start and do set of 15 with a 3-second pause, And then if you want to add weight, if it's easy, add weight. You'll do 4 sets of that. Their glutes are on fire. They're not using heavy load. Then I give them a single leg movement like a Bulgarian split squat or a step up or a lunge. They're not putting any pressure on their back. It's all just their legs.
Yeah.
Single leg movement. And it's body weight or light dumbbells. And then they do maybe back extensions off the 45-degree hyper if they feel good. And then they finish off with abduction. Their glutes are on fire and their back feels fine.
It's amazing. I love that.
And then people do that for like 2 weeks, and then their back pain goes away, and then we go back to using load. Everything's fine.
And this is not talked enough about with back pain. I mean, so many people are suffering with back pain, and this is like the last thing that people are bringing up for them.
No, and I feel like I could help all of them, and it's like,
yeah.
Also, with chronic pain, it's more complex. That you've created like, central sensitization, and it's like if you light a match and like the fire alarm goes off and sprinklers go everywhere. It's irrational. It's because of like fear.
Totally.
Really complex. I follow the guys who know this stuff really well. With chronic pain, it's different, but with like acute things, like lifters are always tweaking certain things. Like at this stage of the game, there's never a week that goes by where everything feels good on me. So my shoulder, my low back, my hips, my knees, something feels a little off and I've got to work around it. And that's why you need to know a lot, to know how to work around things. If you push through it, it just makes it worse. So
it's not just appearance, it's functional. That's critical for the booty. But I also want to ask about the trend and the theme in cosmetic surgery for it, because there's a lot of women going to Mexico, going wherever, getting BBL, which is Brazilian butt lift, which believe me, sometimes when I'm training and doing intense workouts, I'm like, that would be easier. but can you talk to me about that? What does that do for women? And does that weaken things because now they think they have a strong backside? What is your opinion on that? Do you have one?
So, well, there's like butt injections, which I've heard really bad things about, where like implants were like, butt implants where it's like I've seen videos where it's like moved around and it's terrible. Way more popular is what you said, the BBL surgery, and that's just fat transfer. So you have to like gain weight and then take the fat out and then inject it into your butt. And I don't know how long it lasts, like if you have to keep redoing it or what. But anyway, here's the problem. You're not going to, I mean, I've asked a couple of girls in my gym, like, did you get a BBL? And they're like, oh, hell no. What girl's going to admit it? Because it's
right. That's a big deal.
Is that the right word? Faux pas? You don't talk about taboo. You don't.
Yeah, it's not accepted like breast implants got 20 years ago yet. It's like people aren't talking about it like, oh, I did a BBL last weekend. It's not like that right now.
Yeah, it's not. You're not allowed to talk about it. So I do think it's like I hear it's on the rise, and I wish people would use that as a last resort rather than like like try and train the right way first before you resort to that surgery. But anyway. I don't think it impairs. I don't know. It's funny because I've read so much research over the years, and it's like in the elderly or like sedentary, you have fat infiltration into the muscle. I don't know where that fat does the fat go into the
where
fat?
Does it go? And
where it go? But I think that they can still be strong and everything. And I don't know if you can tell through palpation too, because I've had a couple of clients where I'm like feeling, and I'm like, okay, it feels normal, but then why would it feel differently? It's just fat. Like, of course it feels normal, That's
funny.
So I don't know. I think there's not enough research on, I don't know if there's any studies on function. If it affects function, theoretically it would, but I don't think it like gives them this false sense of security or anything like that. They know that it's fat and they need to still build the muscle. And in fact,
jury's out on that one then. So what about
real quick, this is important. I have one client who used to train with me, and she did have a BBL surgery, but her glutes got so much better while training with me. So they grew so much. It's like they were good. They were good to begin with, but you can still grow the hell out of them through proper training too.
That's amazing. Okay. Can women or men, either one, can they build their glutes through body weight training, or do they have to add resistance training to it and heavy weights?
So I would say like most muscles, like, okay, you could at least maintain. Like if I'm lucky, I own my own gym, and everywhere I go, I have a garage. Like I just moved to Vegas. I have this badass garage gym. So I never have to train with body weight. I started building my first garage gym at 24. That was 20 years ago. I've had garage gyms for 20 years. But if I had to, say I could only just do push-ups and dips and like sliding like flies with, know, body weight, I could maintain my pec size. I could probably even build them because I don't focus so much on pecs. Okay. With most of the muscles. I would say glutes would be the one muscle that would be the hardest because it's so much easier with weight. But you would have to do a lot of, the one thing is if you have a partner, if you have someone you can thrust, especially women.
Would that still weight then? That would be weight.
That's weighted. But we're talking about quarantine. Yeah. That's what I tell people, like thrust someone. Like if you had me to sit on your lap, I weigh 240 pounds. It would be hard for you to get me for 10 minutes, That's like the barbell. So I tell people, get a partner to thrust, but if you don't have a partner, you have to just do body weight. You gotta do single leg hip thrust with a pause, elevate the back and the foot. So you go deeper. You gotta, what if you progress to, you can bust out pistols like a champ, pistol squats. Those are hard to do. Most people can't do pistols. So it's like, if you said, all right, I'm going to be quarantined for the next 3 months. My goal is to be able to do 10 pistol squats, and you can't do one right now, but you work every day at pistols. Yeah. Single leg hip thrusts and all these, the extra range sideline hip abductions, sideline hip raises, frog pumps. I made all these up. you do all those exercises. I guarantee you're going to at least maintain, but even no matter how hard you train, you could possibly grow them. And I've had a lot of good feedback from my Booty by Bret program. It's like, the girls who were quarantined, but they had a program. They worked hard at it.
Yeah.
Really
So you completely schooled me on this because body weight is what I've always taught and done. Like all my DVDs are body weight, everything I did. Now my body weight's intense. I do chin-ups, pull-ups. I do like stuff that's intense. However, I don't have the booty that I want. I don't have the butt muscle. So I'm being schooled that no, I've had to add weights. I am relearning and retraining because I have not been able to grow it with body weight. I've been able to be toned, but not grow. Talk to me about food with muscle growth, because a lot of women don't understand this, that you do have to eat to help you grow the muscle too. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You have so many anecdotes, like my own niece, she comes to me, she's working out hard. And about, 1 month in, I'm like, okay, something seems off. You're not gaining as quickly as I thought you would. How much protein are you eating? And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, let's write down what you ate today and yesterday. Okay, I think you're having about 60 grams of protein a day. I want you to have, ideally, you weigh like 120. I'd like you to have 120 grams, but let's just aim for 100 right now. Eat the same way you are, but I'm going to give you this. I'm going to go to 7-Eleven after your workout and buy a 40-gram protein muscle milk. And you're drinking it before you leave here. And she'd have to guzzle this thing down before she left. Her progress just, it was like exponential. The next month, her glutes just blew up because she was finally getting the optimal amount of protein. But you're not just talking about protein; you mean calories too. So
carbs too. I think women stay away from carbs so much, but we need that to grow muscle too.
But it's hard because it's like when you first start working out, everyone has a little bit of fat. What drives them to start working? You don't start working out if you're shredded. You're like, cool, I don't even need to lift and I'm shredded.
Yeah.
What drives you to start working out is when you start noticing like, I have this fat wherever you store it, I have this saddlebags, or with men, it tends to be the low abs and love handles. With women, it tends to be the inner thighs, the back of the butt.
It used to be our butt, that's what's so funny. It used to be like our butts are fat. Let's work out. It's so funny.
Let's like diet down and starve ourselves and get rid of that fat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then you're just like, you have this lean physique, but you don't have the butt muscles you want. So the best way to get the body you want is to eat properly for your goals and then utilize progressive overload so that you build shape. So it's like, let's say, hypothetically speaking, someone's, a woman who she didn't like go crazy and overeat. She only weighs 140, say she's like 5'5", but she is a lot. She doesn't have much muscle. She's a high percentage of body fat. Say she's 27% body fat, okay? Let's say 30%, so that makes it nice and easy. Well, okay, what she should do, because she would think, she would look at herself and look at all this fat and be like, I need to lose 20 pounds and then I'll look the way I want. But if she just starved herself and did cardio, you end up losing probably half the weight is fat, half the weight is muscle, and then you're just still a little skinny fat for your liking. You're like, damn, I got down to 120. I like the way I look, but I don't have the shape that I want. I still have some fat. So if instead you ate a lot of protein and then worked out hard utilizing progressive overload, then you'd get down to the 120, but you'd have more muscle, you'd have more shape, you'd be leaner. And I have a lot of clients that come to me, they weigh like 130 and they look decent. They're just not like, they're not in good shape, but they look decent. And then I train them for a whole year. They keep their calories the same the whole year long. I just make sure they're getting around a gram per pound of body weight per day. And then the end of the year comes around, they're like, holy shit, Brett, look at this. Wow. I weigh 130. I haven't changed in weight, but look at this. Look at my pants. I tried on my pants from last year. Look at this. And there's like a 4-inch gap.
Wow.
That's there. And then they're like, my whole body has changed around. That's called amazing. Recomping. Recomping means you stay similar weight. You're just increasing muscle mass while simultaneously decreasing fat mass. So the scale weight doesn't change, but your physique changes dramatically. You have more shape, less and less body fat percentage. But there does come a point, where once you get pretty lean and like, then you can, once you get to where you're like, okay, I like the way I look pretty good. My body fat is a reasonable level. Now I'm going to start upping my, because your protein always stays the same pretty much, Now I'm going to start upping my carbs. Now you have a little more carbs and your workouts are more intense. You have more energy to fuel your workouts. And then sometimes that's when girls' glute progress really takes off, is when they do start eating more. And I mean, I can tell, like my client Allegra, so many of them, it's like, she's like, I'm eating so much right now and it just keeps going to my booty. Like,
you're like, good problem.
She did stay at like, 120 for like, a year.
Yeah.
And then now she's gotten up to 127, but her calories are a lot higher than she used to be, but it fuels these amazing workouts, but she is strong. So you got to get strong. So it's like, I like this saying, like, feed the muscles, burn the fat. Like you gotta, and I always get in this where I'm trying to lose weight and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to eat breakfast. And then I try and work out and my workout sucks.
Yeah.
I'm shaky. Some people can train fasted just fine, but you got to do whatever you got to focus on your workout. Treat it like it's a mini competition. Like do what needs to be done to have the best workout. And if that means eating breakfast, that means eating 2 meals before you go in, do that. And then just later on, take care of the calories or adjust them, because
I'm with you. I can't do the fasted thing. My workout will suffer. Okay. I want to
be intense. You got to be setting PRs and going up over time,
I want to switch into a different version of this topic, because one thing that you've done so incredibly well, first of all, you're an amazing expert when it comes to building and nutrition and all of that, but you're also an expert, a huge expert on sales, branding, and marketing, whether you know it or not. Like what I love when I looked at your Instagram, and I have private clients that I help with sales, branding, and marketing, so I geek out on this stuff, but you have such clear messaging, such conviction, such authority in your messaging. And I believe that's why your social media grows. I believe that's why you attract clients. I believe that's why you're known as the expert. You claimed that space. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I believe that's more than just knowing you're knowledgeable. Like you're pretty brilliant when it comes to that.
So, all right. Before I was in fitness, I was a high school math teacher for 6 years.
I would have never guessed that. That's very random.
Yeah, in Scottsdale. And I remember like pacing around, like the end of the day would come and I'd just be pacing around. I'm like, God, I feel like I'm talented. Like I created a block course for the district that was like kinesiology and weights. So they'd learn all about the science and then they do weights. I was a math teacher, but I proposed that to the district and I got it passed. And I taught it at the alternative school. I just was always like, I'm very lazy in some ways, but that drives. And I'm very frustrated. I get so frustrated with things. Like I'm like, this thermostat is so stupid. I should go into making thermostats because I could feel it. Because I have common sense. Like this iPhone, why can't you mark my text messages unread so I know to respond? I have to respond to everything. Like they can't figure that out. I get so frustrated. But that's what drives innovation. Complacent people don't invent. Frustrated people invent.
Totally.
Every time I'm driving at night, because I'm a night owl, I'm like, why the hell am I stopped at a red light waiting for 60 seconds when there's no one around?
No cars. Yeah.
Should be a flashing red. I thought about that when I was like 16 years old. But I'm impatient. I'm lazy in some ways, but it drives innovation. So I'm always inventing. Mm-hmm. I'm always thinking of things. The reason I thought up the hip thrust is like, I'm like, I like this glute bridge exercise, but I can do 100 reps. How can I load it? And I was watching a UFC fight, and I'm like, there needs to be an exercise for helping that bridging to help us things. But I'm always thinking of innovation, but I never cared about the money. So I was used to making 30 grand a year as a teacher.
Yeah.
And I think I made 34 grand my last year or something like that. It was like, that's with a master's plus 24 extra credits. And I'm like, it's so funny because back then I was like, God, I feel like I deserve to make 6 figures. And now 6 figures is nothing to me. But anyway, when I first left teaching, my first year, that was during the housing market collapse, mind you.
2008, yeah.
2007-ish, that era. And so I built this gym, Lifts, in Scottsdale. And Lifts was awesome. I still am friends with some of the clients. It was such a good gym. But I remember like my third month, I made, I think, $5,500 in 1 month. And I was like, I'm on my way to make 6 figures. Yay. I invented this scorcher. And I partnered up with investors. And I thought everything was good. And then the housing market collapsed. And I'm like, okay, what else can I be doing? I've always been good at like I never know what the hell I'm going to, even now, what am I going to be doing in 2 years? I never know. Like lately, I'm like, should I do this reality show? I've been having some interest in people wanting to do a reality show. Should I do this? Should I do that? I have no idea. But one thing about me is I'm always plugging away. I'm always getting more education, getting more certifications, learning new skills. Now I want to crank on YouTube. So I'm always trying to learn more. Well, back then, when the housing market collapsed, I'm like, okay, everything went under. My investors pulled out a scorcher. My whole plaza shut down with lifts. So I'm like, back to the drawing boards. Well, what can I be doing to advance my career? Everyone told me you should be blogging. You should be going on News Channel 3. You're smarter than that guy, Chris, whatever, back in the day. And I'm like, I don't know how you even do that. I don't have a PR person. I don't have anything like that. So what I did is I just said, you know what? I'm going to write an ebook. This was 2008. I'm going to write an ebook and I'm going to start blogging, and I'll just have the link to the ebook in the corner. So if people like my stuff, they'll buy my ebook. And it's funny because my stepdad at the time was like, why didn't you get an effing job? No one's going to buy your stupid ebook. Well, I made $8,000 the first month, and then $3,000 a month for like I finally pulled it off for sale. But for 8 years, I made $3,000 a month. I never plugged it once on social media.
And was the ebook about building glutes?
Yeah, and it's funny because this is the story of my career is never knowing what the hell I'm doing, but doing it anyway. It's like I start up a podcast. I don't know how to podcast. I did 5 episodes. It was great, and then I stopped. I started my own research review with my buddy. We had the worst. It was so ugly, but I'm like, let's just launch it. We'll get better over time. But it doesn't have to be perfect. I remember designing my own website, like back when it was bretcontreras.wordpress.com or whatever. It was like, I just owned my own banner and it sucked, but you just got to start. So when I wrote that ebook, I wrote it on Microsoft Word. Microsoft didn't convert to PDFs back then. So I had to find something online that converts it to a PDF. And it's like, I
have a very similar ebook story, and mine started in the same year too. But I'll tell you, the reason yours worked and the reason mine worked is because we were both answering one problem. It was not trying to appeal to everybody. It was like one specific thing. Like you were very clear on, I'm helping you build glutes. And I didn't even see the ebook, but I'm assuming that's what you were answering a problem.
Well, yeah. And I'm like, who's not going to buy this? When I made the picture of the cover, bunch of exercises I took in my gym lifts that they've never seen before.
Yeah.
Like anyone who's slightly interested, who wants to be a better personal trainer, they're going to buy this book. And anyway, but back then I'd have all these experts tell me, be like, Bret, you need to do this. You need to do that. You're leaving so much money on the table. You're great. You're smart, but you're not a good businessman. And I'm like, I'm killing it right now. Like my methods are being every country I go to, Spain, I go to Barcelona, I go to Sydney, I go to Norway, anywhere I go, they're doing hip thrusts. I used to walk up to people like, I invented this exercise. No one believes me. And I'm like, look me up. I invented this. You want some pointers? And people would be like, no, you didn't. And then
because they're thinking of like a glute bridge and not knowing the difference too, or they're assuming, but so it's, and I didn't
forever. It's this loaded barbell hip thrust have not.
Yeah. Yes.
No one did them before 2006.
Right. You came up with that. You came up with hip thrust, which is,
my goal back then was to just spread my methods globally. Cause like get your methods popular around the world. The money's bound to come. And I didn't care about that. I remember all my colleagues would write me and be like, Bret, this should be you could split this ebook up and make way more money, or you should do this. And I'm like, I'm trying to give away my information for free and just barely make a living because I'm not used to much. I'm very frugal. I don't need a lot, and I still don't want to need a lot because, I think the housing market crashed, and then this pandemic recently makes you realize there's not much security. Stuff can be taken away in a heartbeat.
Totally.
So I don't get massages. I don't pamper myself. I don't. I recently gave my house to my mom, and I slept on the couch, in the guest room for 2 months before I moved to Vegas because I want to sleep on the couch. I don't want to need lavish things. I still have my $6,000 truck.
That's awesome. I love that. But you don't have a small following. I mean, first of all, as I'm talking to him, he's got 1 million people following him on Instagram. And if you scroll his Instagram page, and I'll put the link in the show notes, but you'll see his messaging is so direct and clear. And I have a lot of people that listen, Bret, that are younger entrepreneurs, or they're starting out and they're figuring out like, how do I attract somebody? And I'm always telling them, focus on a niche, like focus on one problem you can solve. and take ownership of that. Get clear with that messaging, because you go to your page and you know exactly what you stand for.
That's what I created this niche. You know, I was the first glute expert. I guess there were a couple of people, but they wouldn't have like novel methods. Mm-hmm. But I created the whole, I'm the glute guy, you know, all this stuff. And now there's like a ton of people out there. It's funny. It always pisses me off when they say like, I'm the booty expert. I'm like, you haven't published one thing. You've never, all your methods are mine. You're not the glute expert. Just call yourself a glute expert. Don't say the.
Yeah.
But anyway, they're all glute coaches. I created this whole niche. But anyway, back to my income. It was like my first year when my gym closed down, I think I made 30 grand, or no, I think I made 55 grand.
Okay.
Then it was 70. Then it was 85. Then it was 100. It's just kept going up every single year. So now It's like I make more money than I ever could have dreamed of. So I never got to where I'm spending a fortune. I just now help everyone out. I've been able to.
You've also never made it about focusing on money. And I think people do that wrong too. They focus so much on just how do I get rich? And they're missing the whole idea of helping and solving and coming back with, you know, an actual solution for people.
For me, like you mentioned my equipment. Like I just came out with my Nordic ham curl just a couple of days ago. And I'm like, I'm so proud of it because it's so much more affordable. These other ones, mine's $400. These other ones are $500, $600, $800. They're not.
Let's talk about your equipment for a minute, because you had this bench. Is it called a glute bench? It was like this foam bench that Brie had, and I'm like, where do I find this thing? And of course, you were like backordered when I went on your website. But you come up with such simple, great solutions. Like I was like, how did no one think of this before?
Well, I have a really good team, and it's funny because these people don't have they don't care about being mentioned on social media, but in basically, I went to, it's funny the way things work out. I went to Sydney with my buddy Alan Aragon to speak at Philex, this huge convention. And at the social gathering, I met this guy, Matt, and he was just always around. And you could just tell he just liked being around me and Alan. And now he's my CEO. And when I brought him aboard, before him, I had a WordPress site, you know? And I had everything was WooCommerce based. And then I had all these plugins and they were conflicting. And I would, twice a week, my website would go down. You know,
oh gosh,
it's the worst nightmare. So I had him come along and he moved my sites to Shopify. We've had barely anything since then, but you can't do it all. You need a team. So it's funny. I think he was making 10% back then. We just said, look, I'll just give you 10% of sales. And I think I don't even know what I paid him. The first month I probably paid him like $500. But now he's killing it. Well deserved, because he works his butt off. And then when I got my PhD, I had to do an experiment on the twins. I did this twin experiment, and they're like, you should meet my dad. He invented power block dumbbells. And I'm like, oh God.
Oh wow, yeah.
So then I teamed up with him and his son, and they do such a good job. But a lot of it's like, they have their own ideas. Mm-hmm. That the glute bench was their idea, but like I'll come to them and I'll be like, I have this idea, and then they prototype it for me. They send it. Because like whenever something comes out to market, I thought of it 1 year prior. It takes a year to get everything ready and then get them made from China. But anyway, my whole goal was to make products that work well, that work for women that are 5 feet tall, because no one considers the 5 foot tall woman.
Yeah, and that's me. I'm 5'2", and your glute bench. I just, as I pulled it up as I was talking to you, I'm like, okay, now it's back, so I can order it. It's amazing.
All these things, I'm very proud of them. And it's like a lot of the times it's like I see something else, but I just love that I have a team that can make, like, how many people out there have a team that they can be like, I want to make this, and they get help. So I'm in a very good position. I've got an awesome team. It's funny, my team right now, depending on whether because they don't work for me, they're just, I partner with them, but I only have 5 people working for me, but we work 365 days a year, all 5 of us. We don't have a day off. We'll work Christmas. My sister does my customer service. Wow. I've got, Jamie and Kevin as my assistants. Is like, we together, the 5 of us work 365 days a year. And I think we'll do more than 10 million in sales this year.
That's incredible. Yeah, incredible.
Never underestimate the impact of a team
and never underestimate the power of people wanting a booty because that is so timely right now, and you're doing great things. And I love that I got to know you a little bit better now. And as you all are listening, it's not just about appearance for that. So he's really wanting to help people. And and I can speak for myself that just developing those muscles is changing my relationship with my back. So it's important. Gosh, well, thank you. Where can people find you? Where are you the most active on social media? Instagram, is that your main place?
Always Instagram. I want to start YouTubing more, but right now it's just I quit Facebook, I quit Twitter, I quit YouTube, I quit blogging, I quit sending out newsletters for the most part, and I just do Instagram. It's funny. Yeah. My twin brother convinced me to do Instagram. I was like, Joel, that's stupid. It's like, you can't monetize that. And he's like, trust me, it's the wave of the future. I'm like, how? You can't link out. He's like, just trust me. It's the wave of the future.
Wow.
It's gonna be everything. And I just dove in because Facebook changed their algorithms back like 6 years ago. And I was like, this isn't even fun. I'm going to just dive into Instagram and put all my energy into it. God, did it pay off.
Yeah. So follow him on Instagram, get his book, and check out his equipment. And thank you so much, Bret. This has been awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking some good questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen in as my guest today. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with friends and on social media. I don't advertise this show, so I rely on word of mouth and reviews to get it out in the world. The biggest thank you that you can give me is leaving me a review, and a nice one, I hope, by the way. This is how others find these episodes. If you do leave me a review, be sure to message me at support@nataliejillfitness.com with a screenshot of your review, because I would love to send you a free digital download of my DSR journal as a thank you. And please don't forget to connect with me on social media at Natalie Jill Fit on Instagram and Facebook.